Okay, well, welcome back to Best Way. Yes, like you said, week 8 of 10. It's amazing how the time has just flown by. I hope all of you guys are seeing some success. And today's topic, we're going to be talking about the benefits that come from eating whole grains. Much of the benefits come from the fiber content over here. Here. Now, whole grains have been the principal human food for thousands of years. Grains are considered the universal staff of life. What are the benefits of grains? Grains provide excellent nutrition. Grains are filled with complex carbohydrates and are an excellent energy food. The complex carbohydrates are digested slowly, releasing their sugar over several hours. That's good. Grains are an excellent source of protein. Grains contain all the essential amino acids, but most grains have relatively lower amounts of lysine compared to the other protein foods. Grains are low-fat foods. Grains are also high in fiber, which, as we shall see, help prevent a large number of diseases. And grains are an excellent source of vitamins, and they're also low in sodium, which, as we know, sodium contributes to high blood pressure in many people. So eating food rich in fiber provides several health benefits. It reduces the risk of heart disease. It decreases the incidence of constipation, helps with weight management. As you see over here, grains can be understood as containing 3 basic components. The outer surface of grains is called the bran. It's rough, brown, and where most of the fiber and vitamins reside. The endosperm is the center of the grain, and it's where all the complex carbohydrates are located. This makes grain an energy food. The endosperm is used to make white flour, which makes beautiful white bread and most baked goods. The germ is where the DNA of the grain is located. It is rich in protein. So we'll look at the nutritional value of each part of the grain. The bran, like we said, was the outer coating. It only contains 14% of the weight of the grain, but look how rich its vitamin content is. The bran contains 86% of the niacin, 73% of the pyridoxine, 50% of the pantothenic acid, 40% of the riboflavin, 33% of the thiamine, 19% of the protein. Now, most of these are vitamin B, it's right there, which are very important. So if you see grains, if grains are stripped of their bran layer, they're stripped of most of their vitamins. Grains are most healthful if they're eaten in their whole state or if the flour made from them is whole flour. The germ of the grain is about 2% of the kernel, but it contains 64% of the thiamine, 26% of the riboflavin, 21% of the pyridoxine, 8% of the protein, 7% of the pantothenic acid, 2% of the niacin. The endosperm, which is the center of the kernel, is 83% of the grain. Now, it's the source of white flour. In white flour, the bran and germ are separated and set aside for other uses. The white flour contains 70% of the protein, but is relatively poor in terms of vitamins. White flour makes great bread, but it's greatly diminished in value if it's stripped from its bran and germ. As you see right here, you can see the comparison between whole grain versus white flour. The whole grain has the 3 components, while the white flour is missing the bran and the germ. So when grains are processed into white flours, there is a loss of fiber, loss of protein, vitamins, minerals, only starch is left, and exposure to air and heat further diminish nutrients in flour. Now, most vitamin deficiency diseases, with the exception of scurvy, which is caused by vitamin C deficiency, have come about since whole grain flour was processed to white flour. In order to try to correct this problem, 4 of the 24 missing vitamins and minerals have been added back to white flour to try to restore the lost nutrition. The process of adding back what was just removed or refined from whole grains is called enrichment. Instead of returning to the use of whole grain flour, The food industry tried to fix the problem of white flour by adding back some of the vitamins that had been stripped since for refining. These are the vitamins and minerals that are now added to white flour to try to make it better. As you can see, white flour is still depleted in most vitamins, some of the protein, and all of the fiber. Enriched white flour is a poor substitute for whole grain flour. So let's look at some of the common whole grains that are available for us. And you probably recognize a lot of them. Wheat, it dominates the whole grain scene. It contains large amounts of gluten. And durum wheat is made for pastas and other types of wheat made for bread. Wheat, you could say, is the king of all the grains. Barley is the oldest cultivated grain. Egyptians used to bury their mummies with necklaces of barley. The fiber is particularly healthy. It lowers cholesterol more effectively than oat fiber. Corn has the highest level of antioxidants of any grain or vegetable, almost twice the antioxidant activity of apples. Like barley, oats contain a special kind of fiber, beta-glucan, which can lower your cholesterol. Oats have a unique antioxidant which helps protect blood vessels from the damaging effects of LDL. And remember, LDL is the bad cholesterol. Quinoa is a whole grain that provides the complete protein. So it contains all the essential amino acids. This is actually imported from South America. It looks kind of like sesame seeds. White rice has had the bran and the germ removed. White rice is about as bad for you as white flour. Whole grain rice is usually brown, but it can be black, purple, or red. White rice lacks many of the nutrients found in brown rice. Now, the high level of fiber in rye promotes a feeling of fullness, making rye seeds a good choice for people trying to lose weight. The grain has high fiber in the endosperm and not just the bran. So what are the basic effects of fiber on the colon? When exposed to water, fiber swells up and becomes softer. But fiber cannot be digested, so it passes through the digestive system unchanged. This increases the volume of a person's stool and increases the speed with which a meal passes through the digestive system. This reduces transit time. If transit time is low, there is less time for harmful bacteria to grow in the colon. The bulk of fiber reduces the quantity of food digested and limits the absorption of certain minerals. This is actually of considerable benefit for those who are trying to lose weight. Less food digested means less calories to pack in the fat stores in your abdomen or thighs. So diseases associated with low fiber diet. As you can see, low fiber leads to hard, small stools, which leads to constipation. Constipation and straining leads to hemorrhoids. Straining and low fiber leads to diverticulitis and appendicitis. A low fiber diet results in an increase in gallstones. A low fiber diet increases your risk of developing colon cancer and breast cancer. A high fiber diet lowers your cholesterol level. A low fiber diet increases hardening of your arteries, atherosclerosis. High cholesterol and hardening of the artery leads to heart attacks and strokes. A low fiber diet increases your risk of developing diabetes. A low fiber diet also increases the development of kidney stones. A low fiber diet allows more calories in smaller spaces of food, resulting in increased calories in your diet, which can lead to obesity. So a diet free from fiber, which is indigestible and that simply passes unchanged through you, is an important element in a number of common and deadly diseases. Now let's look at some of the studies done on human populations, looking at the benefits of fiber in the diet. Here's a study published in the Journal of American Medical Association. This study looks at the long-term intake of dietary fiber and its effect on coronary heart disease among women. This was a study of nearly 70,000 US women who were part of the Nurses Health Study. Women between the ages of 37 and 64 who had no history of heart disease were enrolled in the study and were followed for 10 years. The study began in 1984 and follow-up data was collected in 1986 and 1990. The total fiber intake and the serial fiber intake were measured throughout the study. As you see right here, the population of women was divided into 5 groups or quintiles here, Q1 through Q5, there were over 100,000 person years of observation in each group, as you can see. The average intake of cereal fiber was only 2.2 grams per day in the lowest Q1 group, compared to 7.7 grams a day in the highest group, right here, Q5 group. And here are the results. As the total fiber increased in the diet, there was a decrease in coronary heart disease. Those who ate the most fiber in Q5 group right here had an almost 50% reduction in coronary heart disease compared with the group that ate the least fiber in Q1. When looking at fatal heart attacks, the results are especially dramatic in those eating the most fiber. Those in Q5 had a 60% reduction in fatal heart attacks, largely due to their fiber intake, high fiber intake. This was the conclusion from the study. Quote, "In conclusion, our results provide evidence that an increase in foods high in dietary fiber, especially cereal products, may be protective against coronary heart disease in women. This provides further reason to replace refined forms of starch with whole grain products." Here's data from the huge NIH AARP study on fiber-rich whole grain consumption and colorectal cancer. This is just a reminder on the size. There were nearly 200,000 men, 300,000 men and nearly 200,000 women in the study. Fiber intake was broken down from the low to high quintiles. Note there was the average intake in Q5 of nearly 6 grams of fiber. Even with the modest intake of fiber, there was a greater than 30% decrease in colorectal cancer with the Q5 group compared to the Q1 group. If you look at just rectal cancer alone, we see a nearly 50% reduction in the risk of developing rectal cancer in those who take a higher intake of fiber compared to the lowest intake of fiber. Small bowel cancer, same thing, 40% decrease between the highest and lowest fiber groups. Now, cancer of the colon starts as polyps here. Here's a study of all the available literature on fiber and colon polyps, which is called benign adenomas. A meta-analysis is a study and analysis of many studies, available studies. The authors looked at data generated in 20 different studies. There were over 10,000 people total in all of the studies. They looked at fiber from various sources. Total fiber reduces the risk of polyps by 34%. Each kind of fiber contributed some. The total fiber from all the sources was the best predictor of reduced number of colon adenomas. So as you see, there's also different types of fiber. The fiber of one plant may be a little different from a fiber of other plants. In most grains, the fiber consists of indigestible cellulose and hemicellulose. Cellulose remains quite firm in the digestive tract and helps sweep out your colon. Now, these insoluble fibers are most effective in preventing cancer of the colon. Now, the pectins are soluble in water and form a gel that is soft and slick in quality. The pectins are still not digested, but the soluble fibers are more effective in lowering cholesterol levels and are beneficial in preventing strokes and heart attacks. As you see here, the US diet is sadly lacking in fiber. 23% is meat and eggs, 17% sugar, 17% flours, 18% fat and oils. None of these have fiber. It's 86% total of non-fiber, compared to only 14% of fiber foods, which are your fruits and vegetables, grains, and beans and nuts. So we're going to change gears a little bit and talk a little bit about probiotics, prebiotics, and symbiotics. I'm not going to spend too much time, but a high fiber diet changes the make of the bacteria in your colon here. High fiber results in a healthy mix of bacteria. Low fiber results in an unhealthy mix of bacteria. Now, one approach to preventing colon cancer is to directly influence the mix of bacteria by adding bacteria in your colon by adding bacteria. So probiotics are live organisms that colonize in the large colon. To get them in the colon, the most popular route is by mouth, by eating them. It is supposed, but not yet scientifically supported, that this will benefit your health. These are some of the popular and scientific names of some of the bacteria and yeast used as probiotics. The colon is populated with hundreds, if not thousands, of different strains of bacteria. This is just a few strains that they're adding in probiotics. Here are some of the other probiotic brands out there. So what are some of the supposed effects of benefits of probiotics? Well, it helps reduce antibiotic-associated diarrhea, reduces some cancer-promoting enzymes in the gut, helps with cramps, bloating, gas, irregularity. It's beneficial for bacterial overgrowth of the GI tract, normalizes your passing stools, helps with stool consistency, prevention of allergies in infants, and prevention of respiratory tract infections. So now we'll talk a little bit about prebiotics. Prebiotics are actually the food for colon bacteria. Some people take pills that contain a form of food that probiotics like. These are indigestible carbohydrates, which is fiber, that bacteria and yeast can use up as food. Now, of course, you could get a gut full of these every time you eat a whole grain and high fiber foods. So here are some of the substances used as prebiotics, which are indigestible by humans. These are highly refined fiber products and don't look anything like the natural fiber foods from which they were derived. It almost seems like a contraindication in terms of using the word refined fiber, but that's kind of what these are. Now there's symbiotics, which is a bacteria and fiber all in one pill. Again, eating whole grain foods will do just the same trick. So if you compare probiotics with natural fiber, let's review a little bit. So normally we eat food which is, expensive enough. Refined food costs a lot more and low in fiber. Whole grain foods are much less expensive and than processed food and contain a lot more fiber. What is digested produces fat, amino acids, and sugars, as you see here. What is not digested produces dietary fiber, which we make on our own. Nothing is absorbed because fiber is indigestible. Now, those who buy refined food, which have low fiber, are now asked to buy refined fiber, which will cost them money. Dietary fiber produces an environment where good bacteria can grow. But now that they want to sell you a few good bacteria to try and fix the mix, which will grow on its own if you are having a high diet fiber anyway. So our suggestion is just spend your money on the food, good high fiber diet, and don't have to waste so much money on the probiotics and other stuff. So every whole grain food has a different type and amount of indigestible fiber, which is your prebiotic right there. A variety of natural foods will provide an ideal mixture of natural probiotics to your colon. Bacteria will grow, compete, and change depending on your dietary fiber in your diet. So we would say eat whole grains every day. Eat your whole grain breads, your whole grain dry cereals, whole grain cooked cereals. Use whole grain flour. Use a variety of whole grains. And don't have to use so much money on your probiotics, prebiotics, and symbiotics. So here, a little conclusion right here. If you want to eat more fiber so you can speed up your transit time, have softer stools, have an ideal mix of colon bacteria. And that will end my presentation.